Yo, what is going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners, and today we got an absolute banger of a video. We're going to be doing running back blind comparisons. Throw a couple running backs up on the screen and see if you guys can guess who they are. But before we get to that, make sure that you slam that like button right away, because remember, every 250 likes this video gets, I'm giving away a rookie injury guide written by yours truly, the Doc. And for every 1,000 likes this video gets, I'm giving away a Fantasy Headliners draft guide, the best draft guide in the business, 600 pages of fantasy goodness, okay? And if you've been watching my videos previously, you know we've been giving away these draft guides for a while. So if your name is up on the screen, congratulations, you won. Make sure you email Jake at info@thefantasyheadliners.com to get your draft guide, okay? But let's get into it. Running back blind comparisons. Let's go. Let's look at these two guys up here first. First thing I noticed right off the bat, both of these guys have missed games. Option A on the left, 13 games. Option B, only 12 games. Rushing attempts are about the same, a little bit less for option B. Rushing yards, though, almost identical, but yards per carry, this is where this rushing yard number is coming from. Way more efficient on the right side. The guy with 12 games, very efficient on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry. That's an excellent clip for an NFL running back. Rushing touchdowns are the same. Targets and receptions almost identical. But one thing we do like to see with both of these guys is a lot of usage in the passing game. So even if they're not crazy efficient on the ground, still getting a lot of usage in the passing game. We know for PPR leagues that is super important. And when we're looking at fantasy points per game, that is going to be in full PPR. So when you see fantasy points per game in this little exercise we're doing, that is full PPR points per game. Receiving yards about the same on each side. Again, the guy on the right, a little bit more efficient with his touches, only 2 more catches, but 50 more receiving yards. So guy on the right is getting a lot of just really efficient numbers out of this, even though he's not getting a ton of opportunity. So one thing that I'm definitely looking at there. Fantasy points per game is about the same, kind of expected given their stats are almost identical, but look at the price tag with these two guys, okay? Guy on the left going as the RB14, third round price tag, and I've actually seen this guy going in the second round in drafts, 25th overall, so just barely at the beginning of the third round. And guy on the right, almost identical stats last season, going in round 7, 93rd overall, an RB3 price tag. Really interesting to see just kind of the price difference between these two guys, given that they produced very similarly last year. So do you have guesses? If you do, leave them in the comments down below. Before I release the results, on the left, we have Saquon Barkley. On the right, Chase Edmonds, okay? And the reason I wanted to bring these two guys up is, one, I think Barkley was pretty inefficient last year, coming off of his ACL tear and then injuring his ankle. Missed a few games, pretty inefficient once he did come back, but he was pacing to be an RB1 before he injured his ankle in week 4. So after 4 weeks, Saquon Barkley was definitely pacing to be a bell cow running back, and we saw that. But Chase Edmonds, man, when you look at his stats and his efficiency, if he is able to carve a roll out as the RB1 for Miami in this offense that's really going to be exploding down the field, the Dolphins were one of the few teams that actually did target the running back often. Myles Gaskin had over 60 targets last year, and I think Chase Edmonds could be in line for a monster workload if he manages to stay healthy. But I think that's really the argument for both of these guys. So if you decide to go wide receiver early and you miss out on a Saquon Barkley, I would be looking at a guy like Chase Edmonds to potentially give me some options in the running game for a pretty decent price tag in the 7th round, especially in PPR leagues. As we look at these two guys, first thing that pops off the page is option B, really getting a lot of run in the run game, 963 yards rushing, very efficient, 4.7 yards per carry, 207 rush attempts in 11 games is pretty solid. We're looking at, nearly 20 rush attempts a game. That is absolute insane volume for a running back. We love to see that, but The other thing that pops out on these two guys is neither one of them is really a pass catching option. Not a lot of targets out of the backfield for either of these guys, and receiving yards really aren't that dynamic either. But efficient. They did catch the passes that they were when they were targeted. They were catching passes. Fantasy points per game clearly going to the guy on the right side with all that volume, but yards per carry about the same. So really, even though the guy on the left didn't get a lot of rush attempts, he was just as efficient with his rush attempts as the guy on the right. It just shows what volume will do for you. I mean, 207 rush attempts in 11 games is 18, 19 rushes per game. That is just insane volume for a guy and why he was a fantasy asset. But look at the price tag for these two, okay? Obviously, guy on the right getting way more run in the running game, way more opportunities. He's going to score more fantasy points per game. That's just a given. But when we're talking price tag, we got an RB22 on the right, 4th round pick, 48th overall. Kind of right at the end of that 4th round. Guy on the left, though, just as efficient from a running perspective, just less opportunities. RB39, 9th round draft pick. So I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to think about who you think these two guys are, and let's reveal them. Guy on the left, Ramondre Stevenson. Guy on the right, Elijah Mitchell. And the reason I brought these two guys up is that I think that we could see these guys from an opportunities perspective actually start to equalize a little bit. I think that Ramondre Stevenson has a chance to start really eating into the workload of Damian Harris. If both of these guys are healthy for all 16, 17 games, I think that you could see them actually produce at a very similar level. Neither one of them is really an elite pass catcher. Both of them are going to have plenty of opportunities to score rushing touchdowns, but I think the addition of Trey Lance might actually cap Elijah Mitchell's total opportunities and rush attempts, and I think that the team does want to work in more running backs into the system. And so I do feel like Elijah Mitchell could be in line for a little bit of a decrease in volume, and we could see these guys kind of equal out as opportunities arise. I think that Ramondre Stevenson could be an absolute steal in the 9th round, especially if something were to happen to Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson gets a lot more workload. We could see him have an Elijah Mitchell-esque season from last year this year. So just keep that in mind when you are drafting. As we're looking at these next two guys, first thing that pops out to me, guy on the right, option B, does appear to be a better pure rusher, 4.7 yards per carry. Rushing touchdowns, though, going to the guy on the left, so that could equal out a little bit. I mean, obviously, there's almost 200 rushing yards difference between these two guys, but could equal out a little bit if the guy on the left is getting more touchdown opportunities. Both of these guys are target monsters. 60-plus targets for a running back is kind of that ideal top-end pass-catching running back. We're looking for 60 or more targets, so both of these guys hit that threshold. Exact same number of receptions, but guy on the left might be a little bit more natural as a receiver. 548 receiving yards to just 391. So pretty quickly, they're evening out from a fantasy points per game perspective. We're looking at 14.7 to 15.3. Price difference is 4 rounds, and it's important because look at the price tag that you're paying for option B, a 2nd round pick, 21st overall, the RB12 versus the RB30 from current ADP, RB30, 79th overall. That's in the 6th round. Okay. So huge price difference for these two guys that, if you look at their total stats, are really producing at a similar level. So let's go ahead and reveal these two guys. This one was my favorite one that I did. Cordero Patterson and Aaron Jones. Are you kidding me right now? Cordero Patterson, obviously just an insane year last year, 11 total touchdowns, 10 for Aaron Jones. Both of these guys were high-end RBs, especially in the pass game. And I understand that Cordero Patterson is not expected to be in the exact same role that he was in last year. The team really didn't have a lot of options, but I do think that Cordero Patterson is still a value in fantasy drafts this season. The other thing that you have to remember is that Aaron Jones isn't exactly in a perfect situation either, okay? I know that he's going to get a lot of catches and opportunity out of the backfield, but there is some rumbling that A.J. Dillon is a natural pass catcher and is catching passes in training camp. So if for some reason, don't take me to the woodshed yet, but if for some reason A.J. Dillon starts eating into Aaron Jones's pass work and he isn't able to rack up those 52 receptions, 6 receiving touchdowns, if he starts splitting work a lot more evenly, I could see potentially a way that Cordero Patterson in full PPR leagues would be able to actually outproduce Aaron Jones this year. I'm not saying that it will happen. I'm just saying that it could happen. And I don't think that Cordero Patterson is done. I do think that he has a year or two left of really high-end production in this role that they have given him. And even if he moves more towards receiver, there is still plenty of opportunity for him as a running back, as a pass-catching running back, which is what he's being listed as in most fantasy on most fantasy sites, for Cordero Patterson to be an excellent RB3 flex option for your team. And at a 6th-round price tag, I think that is fair given what he did last season. All right, let's look at these two guys on the left. Option A, first thing I notice, 78 targets, just absolute insane target share for a running back in only 13 games. That is absolute crazy target numbers, just a total target hog. Receiving yards are decent. Pretty much everything else is, kind of run of the mill. 4.1 yards per carry is not great, but it's not terrible. 16 fantasy points per game in PPR is excellent at a 2nd-round price tag. Guy on the right, 12 games. The thing that sticks out right away, 0 rushing touchdowns, 0 receiving touchdowns. The guy had almost 1,000 total yards, did not score a touchdown. Very hyper efficient though in the run game, 5.5 yards per carry. So he's clearly capable as a runner, but could not find the end zone. Very interesting. And you see the difference that touchdowns make when you look at their fantasy points per game. Obviously, way more targets and receptions on the left is playing a little bit of a role too, but touchdowns make a huge difference with these two guys. And price tag, guy on the left, 2nd-round price tag RB8, guy on the right, 5th-round price tag RB28. So I'm going to guess if you guys were paying attention and watching our videos, you probably know who these two guys are, but let's go ahead and reveal them. On the left, DeAndre Swift. On the right, Miles Sanders. Blah! Who wants Miles Sanders on their fantasy team? I certainly don't. But I can't deny that I was surprised that he was so efficient on the ground when given opportunities. 5.5 yards per carry is nothing to be, sticking up your nose at, okay? And so while I don't necessarily think that you should be drafting Miles Sanders, because I personally like to go running backs and elite tight ends in the first 4 or 5 rounds and then switch to wide receivers, he's kind of in that running back dead zone of that everyone likes to talk about, where he's just not really a great value in the 5th round when you can get elite wide receiver in that round. But DeAndre Swift, 7 touchdowns, makes a huge difference. Targets, again, just highlighting with these running backs, you want the guys that are going to be catching passes. 16.1 yards, fantasy points per game. A lot of that coming off the fact that he got so many targets and receptions. So DeAndre Swift, I think, is a perfectly fine 2nd-round pick. I like him a lot more in the second half of the 2nd round. If I'm being honest, 14th overall is a little rich for me. I like some other guys around there, but you can't deny that DeAndre Swift in full PPR leagues is somebody that could absolutely explode in fantasy this season. There you go, guys. Running back blind comparisons. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like down below. Remember, every 250 likes, we're giving away a rookie injury guide. Every 1,000 likes, a fantasy headliners draft guide. Leave me a comment down below. Did you like this concept? Was it something you enjoyed? Would you like to see me do other positions or maybe more running backs? If you enjoyed it, let me know down in the comments. Look forward to hearing from you guys. That's it. The doc is out.